Well, hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and we are back for the second installment here in going through the good old stuff, Adventures in Science Fiction in the Grand Tradition, edited by Gardner Dozois. And today we have a story by James H. Schmitz called The Second Night of Summer. Spoiler, I did enjoy this one quite a bit. I still think I like the A.E. Van Vogt story that preceded it, which opened up the collection, but this one was certainly not bad by any means, and is by an author that, one of the few in here that I did not immediately recognize the name. But that's part of why we're doing I'm just going to read the introduction that Gardner lays out for this author, because I think these are fantastic, and it's going to give you suggestions on books and short stories to check out for this author, which is incredibly helpful. Although he lacked Van Vogt's paranoid tension and ornately Byzantine plots, the late James H. Schmitz was considerably better at people than Van Vogt was, crafting even his villains as complicated, psychologically complex, and non-stereotypical characters, full of surprising quirks and behaviors that you didn't see in a lot of other space adventure stuff. And his universes, although they come with their own share of monsters and sinister menaces, seem as if they would be more pleasant places in which to live than most space opera universes. Places where you could have a viable, ordinary, and decent life once the plot was through, requiring you to battle for existence against some dread, implacable monster. Schmitz even has sympathy for the monsters, who are often seen in the end not to be monsters at all, but rather creatures with agendas and priorities and points of view of their own, from which perspectives their actions are justified and sometimes admirable, a tolerant attitude almost unique amidst space adventure tales of the day, most of which were frothingly xenophobic. Similarly, Schmitz was decades ahead of the curve in his portrayal of female characters, years before the women's movement of the 70s would come along to raise consciousness of science fiction writers, or attempt to. Schmitz was not only frequently using women as the heroines in swashbuckling tales of interplanetary adventure, itself almost unheard of at the time, but he was also treating them as the total equal of the male characters, every bit as competent and brave and smart and ruthless when need be, without saddling them with any of the female weaknesses, like an inclination to faint or cower under extreme stress, and or seek protection behind the muscular frame of the tough male hero that would mar the characterization of women by some writers for years to come. The Schmitz woman, for instance, is every bit as tough and competent as the Heinlein woman, who, to be fair, isn't prone to fainting in a crisis either, but without her annoying a tendency to think that nothing in the universe is as important as marrying her man and settling down to have as many babies as possible. In the vivid and suspenseful story that follows, for instance, the hero of this piece is not only a woman, but an old woman, named Grandma Wanatel, a choice that most adventure writers wouldn't even make now, in 1998, let alone in 1950, which is when Schmitz made it. The novel The Witches of Carres is usually thought of as Schmitz's best work, but I myself am fond of the Vega stories, one of which is The Second Night of Summer, which were collected in the book Agent of Vega, a book that is long out of print, alas, but one which, if you can find it, delivers as pure a jolt of widescreen space opera sense of wonder as can be found anywhere. Also, typically among writers of space adventure, Schmitz did most of his best work at short lengths, most of it for Astounding, and later for Analog after the magazine had changed its name, and for Galaxy, including such memorable stories as Grandpa, Balanced Ecology, Lion Loose, Green Face, The Searcher, The Winds of Time, The Custodians, and dozens of others, plus a large number of stories about the adventures of a psi-powered teenager, Telzy Amberdawn. Schmitz's stories have been collected in A Nice Day for Screaming and Other Tales of the Hub, A Pride of Monsters, and, most recently, the posthumous collection The Best of James H. Schmitz. The Telzy Amberdawn stories have been collected in The Universe Against Her and The Telzy Toy. Schmitz's other books include The Demon Breed, A Tale of Two Clocks, and The Eternal Frontiers. Most of Schmitz's work is out of print, although copies of The Witches of Carres still show up in used bookstores with some frequency. Your best choice of sampling his work would probably be his most recent book, published in 1991, The Best of James H. Schmitz, which does contain several of his best stories. You could try ordering it from the publisher, Nespa Press, although I have no idea whether they'd have any left in stock or not. You'd better write first and ask for information. And so this story, The Second Night of Summer, does not open immediately with the protagonist that it promised there, with the older woman. But she does make an appearance a couple pages into it, and is a very interesting character. The premise in the story does not have a villain that you really get in the head of, get to understand, or anything like that. Which was a little disappointing after having that introduction going in there. But all in all, it was a really fascinating story taking place on an alien planet among a group of people who this woman, our protagonist, is a traveling person that comes semi-regularly. And the town's not really welcoming of her, at least the person who's the guardian for the town. And is wanting to drive her away. But there's a reason why she needs to be there. And, it's told well. Not too long, not too short. Runs a really, really good length. And does have a really interesting characterization in there. And some interesting alien creatures. So I think it's absolutely worth reading. We're 2 for 2 right now in the good old stuff. And we have Elsprague de Camp, who I undoubtedly am certain is going to be a delight, because I've heard that name a tremendous number of times. And he's got quite the hefty introduction leading into him, so we'll have a longer video tomorrow to talk about it when I talk about the story as well. I'm looking forward to it. I'm enjoying this a lot. It looks like, I think there were 16 stories in here. So in theory, we've got 16 days of videos that we'll be making here, and we'll go through this collection that the wonderful Michael K. Vaughn sent me. And I'm really enjoying this. So, Michael, I can't thank you enough for sending this, because this has just been exactly what I wanted to explore. And I think I'm even more delighted by Gardner's introductions to each of these authors, and what I know is waiting for me at the very end of this volume, because I think those are going to be the most valuable things, even more so than the stories themselves. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know what you thought of the introduction to the author. Is James Schmitz an author you've ever read anything by? What would you deem to be his worthwhile works to pick up and read? I'd love to know, because we all have very differing opinions, and I imagine most of these writers that are going to get covered have a pretty vast catalog to pull from for both short and longer fiction. So having a good place to go after this first story, where I encounter them for the first time, would be very helpful. Thank you, BookTube.